Today I'm ranking every single Fortnite mobility item from worst to best. And while I'm not including every single collab item, I threw in the ones that are too good to leave out. And we're gonna get started with number 60, the Halloween candies. So these are kind of a joke. Some of them might give you the 0-point dash or low gravity or even a speed boost, but carrying these around with you is never really worth it. So you're really just gonna pop them where you see them, and nobody is stacking these for mobility. Next up is the Chiller Grenade. I mean, this is definitely just a troll item. You hit someone or yourself, and then suddenly you're skating in an ice rink for 7 seconds. It technically gives you mobility, but it's very hard to control, and a lot of the times it ends up being a negative. There are very few moments where it actually helps you, and overall, this is just a meme item. Number 58 is the Spire Jump Boots. I don't have a lot to say about these. First of all, it was so weird. Like, you had to jump 3 times with them just to get a glider redeploy. And even getting them, you had to go through a whole quest line, traveling around the map, delivering some sort of obelisk to a statue just to get them. So no one ever really went out of their way to get these. And then they were just mid once you had them. Number 57 is the Icy Grappler. So this is just like the regular grappler, but every time you used it, you also got the icy feet effect. So you can kind of slide around the map, which is great for movement. But like, have you ever actually tried to use an Icy Grappler in the middle of a fight? You're just sliding around, nearly falling to your death. You have no control of your character. Now, you can really move around the map faster with this grappler compared to the regular grappler if you know how to use the ice effect really well and like slide down mountains and stuff. But overall, like, actually using this in combat is the worst thing. I don't like it. Number 56 is balloons. All right. The only reason these aren't like in last place is because these are kind of iconic and created for a lot of like funny meme moments. You're just floating. You're just floating up in the air, and you can easily fall to your death. People can pop your balloons with some shots, and you have no cover, no speed, just a big, slow floating target. And they're kind of goofy. I'll give them that. They're kind of fun. The only time where I felt like balloons were actually very valid was during chapter 5 season 1, when they had the augments where you can get the balloons, because if you use the balloons with the kinetic hammer, you don't have the issue of the fall damage, because you can use the hammer and then you're floating up in the air, and you can use like an Excalibur while you're up there. I like that combo, but besides that, this is just the meme item. Next up at 55, we have Impulse Grenades. I know, it's a classic item. These are like one of the first mobility items ever added to the game, but you know, their PR is not really standing that well with time, because you don't really get a lot of distance with these. There's no fall damage immunity, so it ends up becoming more of an offensive item than a movement item. Like, you would throw it at people to throw them in storm or make them fall to their death, but using them for actual mobility, not so much. Next, we have Banana of the Gods. This one is hilarious because it does sound like it would be overpowered, but it really wasn't. You would eat the Banana of the Gods and you'd gain a little bit of speed and a low gravity jump effect. But let's be honest, you weren't really moving that fast, and you were kind of easy to beam if you ended up jumping with these on. But it wasn't totally useless because it did heal you. And because of that, it was sort of worth carrying, just as like a little bit of a heal speed boost, but not the greatest movement item we've had in Fortnite. At 53, we have Ship in a Bottle. Now, this is more of a novelty item than anything. You would drop in and summon a giant cursed pirate ship. This was a part of the Pirates of the Caribbean collaboration. You would break all the builds in front of you, and you did some damage, which was okay. It was like 50 damage to players, 5,000 damage to structures, and 150 damage to vehicles. You could ride it for about a minute, which was fun the first time, but let's be honest, the movement wasn't that practical. You could also get beamed, and it was a little bit slow. Once people figured out that you can get shot while using this, it was a really easy way to counter it. At 52, we have the Wings of Icarus. I mean, dude, when we saw this in the trailer, I was like, oh my God, you can just fly in Fortnite now. You could dive down and just like crash into players. This looked super OP and super cool and cinematic in the trailer, but in reality, it was awful. Because every time I was flying around with these wings, I would get shot out of the sky. And when you start getting shot, you're just like flopping around in the air until you get to the bottom, and then you can't even do anything for like a second while you're stuck in that animation. It was just way too weak. And it wasn't that fast either. Like, you weren't really flying that fast. So it made it even easier to get shot while you were up in the air. At 51, we have Hop Rocks. These were added in Chapter 1, Season 4 in Dusty. It was like a little bit of a mini jump boost, and you couldn't even really pick them up off the ground. You could only eat them off the ground. So you couldn't like stack these and save them for endgame or anything. And there wasn't a speed buff either. So you just had like a little bit of low gravity. So it was a little bit awkward to use, and you had to only use them at the Dusty Divot area. So yeah, very limited movement. Next up, we have the Unstable Exotic Pistol. Honestly, for as far as movement goes, this is probably the worst movement item on this list. The only reason it's not in last place is because the actual pistol itself is okay. It does decent damage. It's unique. You can throw people off when you're shooting them with this. But actually using this for your own mobility is so bad. It's a very, very short range shockwave. It does give you fall damage immunity, so it's not like an impulse, but it really doesn't work that well for movement. And at 49, we have the Bouncer Trap. Now, this is a classic item, and I think back in the day, it was a lot more powerful when it first got added because players were just bad at Fortnite. It's super clean for lining up trick shots or hopping into a fight, especially if you comboed it with like a shockwave or even using the Bouncer Trap to boost your launch pad and get a really high distance launch pad. But in terms of like pure mobility, it's not the best mobility, and you kind of like fly in the air slowly, so it's very easy to get shot. It's also very predictable now. Players are better, so if you actually are playing a mode that has the Bouncer Trap and you use it, you end up getting just one pumped as you slowly fly up in the air. At 48, we have Groot's Bramble Shield. So this is more of a defensive rotation tool, and you would activate it and start rolling around inside of like a big Groot ball, blocking damage and cruising around the map. So it's like a giant hamster ball. The mobility wasn't like the greatest, like it was just okay mobility, but it was a good way to kind of get around protected. But there was this crazy glitch where when you use this item, you would like basically teleport across the entire map. They ended up vaulting this item for most of the Marvel season, which kind of sucks. Next up, we have crash pads, and I'm talking about the big ones, all right? You would throw these down and you would bounce off of it to avoid fall damage. You could even use them to break into people's boxes because the big ones actually damage structures. They're very, very easy to use. They're very forgiving, but they are pretty one-dimensional. And when they first came out, you couldn't really sprint, right? There wasn't sprinting or sliding. Now, you know, with the crash pad juniors and stuff, like now that we have sprinting and sliding, like you can sprint and then slide into a crash pad and go further and kind of like be harder to hit. But back then you were just moving normally. So you were kind of like up in the air a lot slower. You weren't really going that far forward or backwards like you can do now. So yeah, because of that, they're not that high on this list. Next on this list, we have the Glider Redeploy. So it's a strong ability, but it's not worth it to carry this as a full item slot. And because of that, it's not high on this list. I mean, it's really good for Glider Redeploys. Like it's really good to have this. You can avoid fall damage at any given time. You can sky base. But like I said, you have to carry it as an item, and usually there's a lot of other items you can carry instead. Next up, we have the Shockwave Bow, and this one was added in Chapter 2, Season 6. You could basically just shoot a shockwave with a bow and arrow. The thing about these shockwaves, though, is they weren't as powerful as regular shockwaves. You also had to charge your bow up for it to count as a shockwave. So to use this as mobility, like the shockwave by itself was just a little bit better. However, because it was using, you know, bow ammo, you could have like 50 shockwaves, right? Like if you have a shockwave bow and you have like max bow ammo, like you could have like 50 shockwaves versus only carrying 6. So you could use it a lot more, even though it was like kind of like a weaker shockwave. Next up, we have an underrated item, the Chrome Splash. So this one is like a splash that you would throw down and it would turn you into a chrome blob. Once you were in that form, you were kind of zooming around the map, and you can even use the phase ability to go through builds while staying in the chrome form. And you were immune to fall damage while in the chrome form. So it had a little bit of a learning curve, but some really good players started using this, and they were basically just using it to W key people, jumping into their box and then pulling out their pump and putting them to sleep. Next, we have the Wolverine Claws. So these claws were vicious. They were good offensively, but you could activate them and go on full berserk mode, slashing, dashing, and regenerating HP. It felt like you actually became Wolverine. And it had a very unique forward lunge that let you close the distance based off of the direction you're facing. The only downside is that the movement was very short range, but in close quarter, this was the perfect kind of movement to jump over someone's builds or get into someone's box or just like close a small gap and then pull out your pump. Next, we have the jetpack. So it's not the best for, fast movement, but in zero build and especially in certain seasons, the jetpack is really, really good. The only issue is that it ran out of fuel very fast and you're kind of hovering in the air, so you're easy to shoot. But in some seasons with all the different close quarter combat areas, especially in chapter 3 season 2 when zero build first came out, the jetpack was a must have. The next movement item is slap items. This is all the slap barrels, the slap juice, the slap cannon. Infinite sprint is very good. It gave you 30 seconds, no stamina cooldown. You can just keep sprinting. And these are very easy to find in the seasons that they're at. There's slap berry, slap juice, slap splashes. They all gave you the turbo sprint regen. And this is a great way to move around, especially in endgame. It's just very, very consistent and reliable movement. This next one on this list as a standalone is not the greatest, but because it combines really well with other movement items, it's not as low on this list. We got flow berries and flow berry fizz. So it gave you the low gravity effect and you were immune to fall damage when you use these. Obviously you get healed, you get shields and stuff, but the best part about these is combining these with other movement items. Using a flow berry and then using a grappler, or using a flow berry and then using a shockwave. It would give you a big boost to all your other mobility items. So it just pairs really well, but on its own, like just as a standalone mobility, it's not the greatest. Next, we have the chainsaw. So this one was pretty cool. Offensively, like you could rush people with this and do a lot of damage and kind of break into people's boxes and builds. And you could zip across the map using these. And there was even like a glitch where you could use the green skull dash with the chainsaw at the same time and just go flying across the air. That wasn't intentional, but we'll still account for it because it did not get fixed. You could do that the entire time the chainsaw was in the game. It was a unique mix of mobility and brute force, and it wasn't a very easy item to use, but when it worked really well. Up next is the flint knock pistol. This one is a fan favorite, and for good reason. This is basically what the mammoth pistol was before the mammoth pistol came in. You had a single shot that did a lot of damage. You could push players with that shot, but you would also push yourself. So you could use that single shot to save yourself from fall damage, to push yourself into high ground. The only issue is that you only get one shot and it has a slow reload, but that shot does a ton of damage, and the movement was very stylish. People were using multiple flint knock pistols to fly through the air and catch people off guard. Trick shotters were using this all the time. It's just a very cool, fun weapon to use with very interesting and unique movement. All right, so these were only in for one season, but next is the Carnage and Venom symbiote. So if you played during this collab, you know how wild the symbiotes were. It would give you insane mobility. You could launch yourself forward every few seconds with the crazy leap, and the distance you covered was actually nuts. But that's not it. You could also grab players and yoink them into your box or out of their box. And if I remember correctly, you could also use these as a glider redeploy. So this is just crazy all around. The amount of movement that you could do with these items, offensively, defensively, and just pure movement was insane. Next up, we have Shuri's Black Panther claws. This was during the second Marvel season, and these were built for high pressure plays. You could activate them to dash through the air, and you could also swing with them for some quick damage. But I think these were just really, really good to move around the map because you had these kinetic dashes you could use. You could also combine it with other movement items like Flowberry Fizz or the Iron Man flight kit to permanently fly through the air. And once you charge up enough kinetic energy, you could activate like the ult on this weapon to get way more dashes in a short period of time, allowing you just to fly around like Black Panther. Next up, we have the shadow bombs. So these are pretty sick. You would pop one and turn invisible and have fast movement. You could even double jump, and as long as you were climbing walls and not touching the ground, you could stay in that shadow stealth form permanently. And people were doing this all the time in end games to pretty much stay alive and not have to use any of their materials. And because you were kind of invisible, people couldn't really see you. Mr. Savage actually used one of these to win a game of a Fortnite tournament when he ran out of materials and the storm pulled over a hill. He was able to use the shadow bomb and just permanently jump up the hill to stay in the safe zone, and his opponent ended up dying in storm. The movement was crazy with these. They're very iconic, but they were also very hard to use. Next up is the inflatable. This one is actually kind of goofy, but if you knew how to use these, it was actually really good. You could instantly turn them on and you would turn into a giant inflatable cow, and you could bounce and roll around pulling yourself around the map and moving really fast the more momentum you had. You could rotate up hills, and it kind of looked ridiculous, but you didn't take damage while you were in the inflatable form. If people shot you enough, they would pop you out of it, but a lot of people ended up ignoring them in end games. I'm not sure why they've never brought these back. They were in the game like in chapter 2, but then like they just now are only in creative. The next movement item is the lightsaber. It's not really the craziest movement, but if you knew how to use the double jump and the lightsaber abilities, it wasn't that bad. You can save yourself from fall damage. You could take high ground. The movement animation is actually really cool. The flips and dodges you can do with the lightsaber is actually very cool. And when you have the lightsaber out, you actually sprinted faster, allowing you to chase down opponents. Next on this list is the Ninja Turtle Mythics. This is like a reskin of the kinetic blade. You could just dash through the air using these, and they had like about 3 charges each. The dash wasn't as good as the kinetic blade, so it's not as high on this list, but these were really good to save yourself from fall damage, to take high ground, to pretty much launch into a player and then use the actual weapons themselves to take them out. They were very fun to use during chapter 5, and while they're not the best mobility item, when you combine the actual damage option with these, it wasn't bad. Next, we have Ride the Lightning. This one was actually very, very unique. So they dropped a guitar item in collaboration with Metallica, and you would strum the guitar, turn into lightning, launch into the sky. Then you could choose which direction you wanted to kind of fly, and you could have like 2 dashes in a given direction. And then you would go slamming down. And when you slam down, you can actually damage players. So you could use this offensively as well. But yeah, it was very, very unique. And your teammates and enemies could actually ride your lightning where you launched from and turn into a lightning themselves and follow you. So it had a lot of unique mobility features, and it created for a lot of really cool clips. Next up is Mist Form. This one just got added this season. You would pop Mist Form and then transform into a flock of ravens, which looks really, really sick. And for 4 full seconds, you take no damage, even storm damage. And you're flying in whatever direction you're looking at. You can fly straight up in the air, left and right, and then you would transform back into your regular character, and you would still not take fall damage when you transform back, allowing you to use Mist Form to jump off of cliffs and high ground. And it's also a good way to get out of a fight because you literally can't take damage. And some pro players are actually using the Mist Form in tournaments. When the storm fully closes in and it's ticking for 10 damage, they'll use the Mist Form to get 4 seconds of no storm damage, because while you're in the Mist Form, like I said, you literally do not take damage even from the storm. The next item is the Witch Broom. This one's in a similar style to the Silver Surfer board and the Nimbus Cloud, so they're kind of all very, very similar. It launches you straight up. You crash through builds. You could even use this to break into someone's box and catch them off guard. You can then cancel the glide while you're in the air and drop down, taking 0 fall damage. So there was a lot of skill involved in using this. You could fake out opponents, you can catch people off guard, and you also had 10 charges with this before it completely ran out. But it did have a decently long cooldown, but overall just a very fun item to use. The next item is the Rocket Drill. So you would just charge up the rocket, fly through the air, and then you could crash into people doing a ton of damage to their builds or themselves, and you would plow through everything. It has a very unique animation, very good mobility, although the movement was mainly just horizontal and you were easy to beam out of the sky. But if you knew how to use this and when to use this, it was very, very effective. Next on this list is the Iron Man Flight Kit. This one is just plain simple fun. You would fly through the air as Iron Man. You could even combine this with other mythics and items to shoot people. And you actually lasted a very long time in the air. You were flying around for a very, very long time before you ran out of fuel and went down. Unlike the Icarus wings, you were actually kind of tough to shoot while flying around with the Iron Man Flight Kit. So when you did get shot, you would go crashing down, similar to the wings. It was a lot harder to get shot. Next is the Kneecapper, and I think this one's a little bit underrated. It was obviously added during the Lawless season. You get the baseball bat. The offensive capabilities of this bat was really, really good, but also the movement capabilities was insane. You ran faster. You also did not take fall damage when you jumped while using this bat, and this was a must-have during competitive and casual games for that season. Next up is the Silver Surf board, which is very similar to the Witch's Broom, but the reason why it's higher on this list is because the cooldown was lower and it looks cooler. So that we are factoring the coolness factor into this. And the next item is a very new mobility item, which the reason why it's not higher is because we have to see how it lives up to the hype. But so far, I'm very impressed with it. The Light Riders Surf Cube. This one is still super fresh. You can activate this little surfboard and then you can fly on the floor, but you can also use air time and charge it up and basically start flying in any direction, straight up in the air. You would also not take fall damage when you cancel this. So you can kind of fly up in the air, cancel, land on someone's head and pump them. So there's a lot of different ways to use this. It does have 200 energy before it runs out, but that does last quite a bit. The next item on this list is an absolute classic, the Rift to Go. Pop it, boom, you're rifted up in the air. You can instantly start diving down or gliding. Very, very good mobility, very good way to take high ground in end games. This thing was a lifesaver for a lot of people who are stuck in storm or stuck in a bad fight. When it first got added to the game, there was a way to rift and then instantly use a gun while you were up in the air. So if you rifted your opponent, you could one pump them while you're up in the air. And then there was a bug when it came back in the first season of OG, where if you rifted and then mantled at the same time, the rift would stay where you used it. So you can just, pick up some other item and then enter the rift. But if you are really OG, you remember back in the day, you could rift and pick up an item at the same time and it would replace the rift, but still rift you up in the air. The next item is also a classic item. It's a must-have in reload and any kind of mode that you need mobility. It's the grappler. It's plain and simple, 10 charges, even more in certain seasons. You can grapple up, you can grapple down, but this item would be a lot lower on this list if it wasn't updated about a year or two ago. You guys remember the grappler, when it first came out, you would take fall damage when you used it. So it was actually very dangerous. A lot of people fell to their death using the grappler. But now when you use the grappler, you don't take any fall damage, which allows you to grapple straight down without worrying about instantly killing yourself. And if you know how to do the technique where you grapple and swap to a weapon at the same time, you can cancel the animation, making it even better. Whenever I play reload, I absolutely need a grappler. I'm grabbing that over shockwaves. I'm grabbing that over a lot of mobility. And the next item is also from this season. It's the base boost gloves. These are new, but already people are absolutely loving them. Two different ways to move around. You can do the base jump, taking you up in the air, or you can do the base wave, which shoots a base attack and it shoots you in the opposite direction. So if you do a 180 turn around, shoot, and then turn back around, you can kind of boost yourself forward. I know it's a little bit harder to do that with a controller, but I'm having a really good time using this on mouse and keyboard, and it's very, very good for moving around. And it's almost a must-have during this season. Next on this list is the Rocket Ram. This one is pure chaos in the best way. You would charge it up and then blast off like a missile and crash through everything in your path, breaking builds and doing a lot of damage to players as well. The animation was very cool for it. It was during a really, really good season. The only downside is that you were easy to get shot out of the air, so you do have to be careful when you're using it. Next on this list is another classic, the launch pad. Launch pads are legendary, especially the trap version that just goes into your inventory. It doesn't take up any inventory spots. You can just put it down on any flat structure or any flat build. You put it down, you're up in the air, you're rotating, you pull your glider. Very, very good. There's launch pads all over the map from every single chapter, but I think the ability to have one in your inventory is just priceless. The next item is the Grapple Blade. This one gave you an anime dash style that we didn't even know we needed. You lock onto a target, grapple, and then hit them with a clean slash. It wasn't just movement. This was also aggressive offensive mobility. It was perfect for chasing down weak players or diving into third parties. And the tracking felt super strong while using this. The only downside is you had to fully commit. Once you used it, you were going in that direction no matter what. Don't get one pumped. Next is the Sky's Grappler. This thing is basically a grappler, but it was infinite. No cooldown. You could just keep using it. Never had to slow down. You were moving around like Spider-Man, but it didn't cancel fall damage until recently as well. So you did have to be careful about that. And now we're approaching the top tier movement items, and we're going to start with the Shockwaves, another Fortnite classic. An improvement to the impulse grenades. You get the low gravity effect. You get launched, no fall damage. You could combine these with other items like Flowberry Fizz or bouncers. You could break through any structure using these, like literally any structure, you're breaking through them using shockwaves. So there's a lot of offensive ways as well to use them. Next up is the Lawless Rift Launcher, one of the rarest items in Blitz mode. You would shoot a rift and you could shoot 2 of them and it's permanently recharging. So every 20 seconds, you get another rift that you can use, giving you permanent and infinite mobility. You can use this offensively and defensively. What I mean by that is you can shoot it at somebody, rift them up in the air and then shoot them while they're in the sky, or you could shoot it down at yourself and then rift and get out of there. Overall, it's a very solid exotic, very great mobility, and it's infinite. Next up is airbending. Airbending is one of the cleanest movement items we've had in Fortnite. Very easy to use, very smooth animation. You would use airbending to kind of like roll around, going up and down hills, no fall damage as well. And you could do an air jump to get high ground and kind of like take some height from players. And you could very smoothly transition from airbending into pumping somebody in the face without any downtime. Next up is the Nitro Fists. These were so strong offensively, but they were also really good for mobility. You'd have 4 charges, 5 charges if it was the mythic, and those charges would come back as well. So they would kind of slowly recharge. And then in the beginning, they would recharge so much that you could use all the charges. And by the time you were done with the 4th one, your first one was already recharged. So they ended up nerfing it a little bit, but even after it got nerfed, it was still really, really good. Now, the thing is, this was actually mainly used offensively to kind of break into people's boxes and just like punch them a few times in the face, but the movement was insane. The next item on this list is the Wing Shot Grappler. This one was added this season, and it's basically a reskin of the Jules Grappler, but it does have only 40 charges. When it first came out, it was 20 charges. They buffed it to 40. It has insane range and it allows you to glide or redeploy after using it. But if you cancel the animation, of course, you go even faster and you can immediately pull out your weapon. The next item is the Storm Beast Pom-Poms. This was also added this season, and these are a nightmare for players. If somebody's chasing you while they're in the Storm Beast form, they're going to keep track of you even while you're in a car driving away. The Storm Beast runs fast. You can even run faster and move faster by spamming jump, and there's no cooldown on the jump as well. And you just put a lot of pressure on players when you get close to them. So offensively, it's really strong, but the mobility on this is also just as crazy. Next up is the Nimbus Cloud. This is straight out of Dragon Ball Z, similar to the Silver Surfer and the Witch's Broom, but it combined really, really well with the Kamehameha mythic, making it the ultimate combo to actually pull off the Kamehameha and one-shot anybody. It also had a very, very crazy low cooldown, so you could use it in the middle of fights and rotate fast across zones. Next item is the Kit Shockwave Launcher. So this one allowed you to shoot shockwaves on the ground, similar to the Shockwave bow, but the shockwaves were actually pretty good. And it used rocket ammo, so you could kind of keep replenishing it, assuming you have a lot of players eliminated. It was also a perfect combo for Kit's charged shotgun, because you can use it and then start charging the shotgun immediately. And then as the shockwave pushes you towards your opponent, you just one pump them with the charged shotgun. Next up is the War Machine Hover Jets. You could hover in the air, you could strafe while shooting them, and you could even throw an emote down in the middle of flying and styling on them. You could even sprint while hovering, if you did not know. If you did that, you were zooming across the sky. You burn through fuel faster, but the speed boost was unreal, and being able to cancel the hover jets to kind of dash around ended up becoming some of the best mobility in Chapter 5. Next up is the Void Oni Mask, a very unique item where you threw a Oni orb and then you can kind of like teleport to it whenever you felt like it. And you could use this to fake out opponents, and you could throw the orb really, really far as well. You could throw it straight up in the air, use it and not take any fall damage as you fall down. So there was a lot of outplay potential with this. Next is the Typhoon Blade. This thing has some crazy mobility, allowing you to just run at supersonic speed while also using slash attacks and a very powered up slash to knock opponents back. So the movement was really fast. It was good at catching people off guard. It had a crazy animation, making it very hard to get shot while you were using it. So offensively, it was insane. And the movement was also just a cherry on top. And now it's time for our top 5. At number 5, we have ODM gear. These felt like straight out of Attack on Titan. They did such a great job with the animation, with how this worked. You were grappling all over the place. You were hard to hit. You moved really fast. You had a slash attack with it, which was really good, and it sent people flying in different directions. It was stylish. It was fast. It was deadly. It was a great collab item, and I miss it. Next up is the Lawless Shockwave Rocket Launcher, our first exotic rocket launcher, and it does not disappoint. It does damage to players, 50 damage, but mainly it is used for mobility and it doesn't damage you. That is a first. an explosive item that damages other players but doesn't damage you. It has never been done in Fortnite before, and this thing was crazy. You could use this to fly around the map. It was very fun, very fast, and you can catch people off guard all the time with this. Next after that is the kinetic blade. This was peak movement and damage, slicing through the air, very fast recharge time, no durability as well when it first came out, and a very good slash ability that would knock enemies back. You could use it to engage, disengage, finish off a weak opponent. There was a lot of ways to use this, but it does get outclassed by another kinetic weapon, the kinetic shockwave hammer. For mobility, the shockwave hammer was just on another level because offensively, it was kind of nuts. Being able to break all structures in its path, being able to do a ton of damage to players with the left click, and having insane mobility with the right click. And pro players started dropping it to cancel the animation of the slam so that they can use it to take people's builds and boxes, which was like just next level. You could also combine the shockwave hammer with balloons. You could also use the shockwave hammer on the back of trucks to fly through the air. There was just a lot of different things you could use the shockwave hammer for. So it is one of the goats of Fortnite mobility. And at number 2, I'm giving it to the Jules Grappler. Let me explain. When the Jules Grappler first came out, maybe it wasn't the best mobility item. It's a permanent grappler, infinite uses, and you can glide or redeploy after using it. But a lot of people didn't like glide or redeploying because you couldn't use your shotgun immediately. You were kind of floating through the air, easy to shoot. But here's the thing. Players have discovered you can cancel a grappler's animation by swapping to a weapon immediately after shooting it. And that applies to the Jules Grappler. The Jules Grappler has insane range. And if you cancel the animation, you also cancel the redeploy part of the grappler. If you ever seen someone in reload with the Jules Grappler who knows how to use it, they are flying through the map, literally flying through the map, just one pumping people left and right. They're hard to predict. They're hard to track down. It is one of the greatest mobility items, but I do have it at second place. And obviously, you might have guessed what comes in at first place. This one completely blew us away when they first added it. It's better than some other real games that have this item in it. The Spider-Man web shooter. 80 charges, clean movement, insane animations. If you got one, you could use it the entire game pretty much. Really easy to control, and you can use it offensively, defensively, all kinds of different ways. It was just very, very smooth. I'm very impressed with how Epic implemented this into the game and made it even better than some other Spider-Man games when it comes to the movement of the web shooters. It absolutely carried Chapter 3 Season 1, and it was a huge moment for Fortnite fans and Spider-Man fans, and for that reason, it takes the #1 spot. This honestly was a very hard list to make. Some of these maybe are in the wrong spot, but you guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.